The Great Hall of the Karzun Empire was not built to make visitors comfortable. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds of faint blue mist drifted near the top, lit by floating crystal lights. The walls were carved from dark stone that shimmered like metal, covered in symbols older than most stars. Every step echoed, even when taken softly. This was a place meant to remind everyone who entered that they were small. Sergeant Elias Rook stood near the far end of the hall, hands behind his back, spine straight, eyes forward. His dark blue human uniform looked plain compared to the armored shells, glowing robes, and towering frames of the alien delegates around him. Some of them stood twice his height, others floated. A few were so massive that the floor beneath them had been reinforced. Elias was not important here. He knew that. He was only a guard, assigned to the human diplomatic team for this first major alliance summit. Humanity was new to the galactic stage. They had only recently proven they could survive beyond their home system. Their ships were smaller. Their weapons were weaker. Their influence was thin. Most of the aliens saw humans as useful, maybe brave, but fragile. A short-lived species with soft bodies and loud emotions. Elias did not care what they thought. His job was simple: stand, watch, react if needed. At the center of the hall, the alien king sat upon a raised throne carved from a single piece of black crystal. He was enormous, even by his species' standards. His body was covered in layered armor-like plates, each etched with gold markings that told the story of his victories. His 4 eyes scanned the hall slowly, missing nothing. Around him stood the ruling council, generals, warlords, elders, each one powerful enough to command fleets. The human diplomats spoke when aloud, careful, and respectful. They offered trade, cooperation, shared defense, words chosen to avoid offense. Most of the council listened with polite boredom. Elias noticed the glances. Some aliens stared at the humans with curiosity, others with open contempt, a few with hunger, though he tried not to think about what kind. He kept his face calm. He had seen worse rooms than this: bunkers under fire, colonies burning in vacuum, hallways filled with smoke and screaming. This was just stone and silence. Then the doors at the far side of the hall opened. The sound was deep and resonant, like the opening of a mountain. Every conversation stopped. Even the floating lights seemed to dim. A figure entered, walking with calm confidence. Princess Valera. Elias had seen her before, only once from a distance. She was taller than most of her kind, her form elegant but powerful. Her skin shimmered with soft silver and deep violet tones, catching the light with every step. Her eyes were bright and sharp, filled with intelligence rather than cruelty. She wore no heavy armor, only ceremonial markings and a simple royal mantle that flowed behind her like liquid shadow. The hall bowed. Even the human diplomats lowered their heads. Elias did not bow fully. As a soldier on duty, he lowered his gaze and held position. That was protocol. Princess Valera walked past the council members without slowing, past generals who had crushed entire worlds, past champions whose names were feared across systems. She did not look at them. Her gaze was fixed forward. Elias felt it before he understood it. A strange awareness, like the pressure before a storm. Her footsteps stopped, right in front of him. He raised his eyes slowly, careful not to appear aggressive. She was close, closer than any royal had ever been to him. He could see the fine details of her markings, the subtle movements of her breathing. The entire hall was silent. Princess Valera tilted her head slightly, studying him, not like a curiosity, not like a tool, like a choice. Then she spoke, her voice clear and steady, carried by translators into every language present. "Human warrior," she said. Elias stiffened. His heart began to beat faster, but his face did not change. "Yes, Your Highness," he replied. Her eyes did not leave his. "Will you be my mate?" The words echoed through the hall like an explosion. For a moment no one moved, no one breathed. Then chaos. Alien nobles shouted in outrage. Warriors reached for weapons before remembering where they were. Advisors whispered urgently to one another. Some laughed in disbelief, others hissed in anger. The human delegation froze completely. Elias felt as if the floor had vanished beneath him. Mate. In human language, the word meant something very personal, something emotional, something deeply private. But this was not a human court. Elias swallowed once. "I do not understand, Your Highness," he said carefully. Princess Valera did not look away. "A mate among my people," she explained calmly, "is a chosen equal, a bonded protector, one who stands beside the royal line and shares its fate." The hall erupted again, louder this time. The alien king rose slowly from his throne. Silence fell like a blade. His voice was deep, heavy with authority. "Daughter, explain yourself." Princess Valera turned her head slightly, acknowledging him, but she did not step away from Elias. "Weeks ago," she said, "during the border conflict near the Heliox Drift, this human stood between Karzun civilians and orbital fire." Elias remembered. The transport convoy. The alarms, the burning sky. He remembered pulling alien children into cover while explosions tore the street apart. He remembered thinking he would die there. No one had thanked him. No one had even asked his name. "I observed him," Valera continued. "He had no reason to do so. No order, no promise of reward. He believed no one was watching." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "That is why I chose him." A low growl moved through the council. One of the warlords stepped forward. "This is an insult," he snarled. "A soft human cannot bear the weight of our traditions." Another added, "The bond is sacred. It is not a symbol to amuse lesser species." Princess Valera turned slowly, her expression sharpening. "You call him soft," she said, "yet he stood where your soldiers fled." The accusation struck hard. Elias felt every eye in the room shift back to him, judging, measuring. The alien king watched silently. Elias realized something then. This was no misunderstanding. This was a test. He took a slow breath. "Your Majesty," Elias said, speaking clearly, "I am a soldier. I do not seek honor beyond my duty. If I have offended your court, the fault is mine." The princess looked at him again. Something like approval flickered in her eyes. The king raised one massive hand. "Enough," he said. "Tradition will decide." He looked down at Elias. "Human, do you know what you stand before?" "No, Your Majesty," Elias answered truthfully. "You stand before a path that kills most who walk it," the king said. "If you accept the bond, you will face trials meant to break champions." Elias did not answer immediately. He thought of Earth, of quiet nights under artificial skies, of the people who had trusted him to protect them. He nodded once. "If that is the cost," he said, "I will face it." A ripple of shock passed through the hall. The king studied him for a long moment. "So be it," he said at last. "The trials will begin." Princess Valera stepped back then, but her gaze never left Elias. As guards moved to escort him away, Elias felt fear settle deep in his chest. But beneath it was something else. Resolve. Whatever this was, whatever it would cost him, he would not break. Not here, not in front of the galaxy. And somewhere deep in the ancient hall, the stars themselves seemed to listen. Elias Rook was moved through corridors that felt older than history. The guards who escorted him were silent, their heavy steps echoing against smooth black walls. The air was cool and carried a faint metallic scent. Soft lights glowed from the walls themselves, reacting to movement as if the structure were alive. Elias kept his hands relaxed at his sides. He did not resist. He did not speak. His mind, however, was loud. What had just happened made no sense. A royal bond, trials meant for champions, a princess who had looked at him as if he mattered. He was a soldier, nothing more. They reached a chamber carved deep within the palace. The doors sealed behind him with a low hum. The room was large but empty, except for a circular platform in the center and symbols etched into the floor. A tall alien stepped forward. This one wore markings of authority and carried a staff that glowed faintly. "You will wait here," the alien said through a translator. "The trials will begin when the council is ready." "How long?" Elias asked. The alien's eyes narrowed slightly. "As long as needed." The figure turned and left. The doors sealed again. Elias was alone. He exhaled slowly and sat down near the wall, resting his back against the cool stone. He checked himself out of habit. No weapons, no communicator. His uniform was intact but stripped of all equipment. Standard prisoner treatment. He closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of the princess. Her voice had been calm, certain. She had not asked as a joke or a challenge. She had chosen him with full understanding of the consequences. That scared him more than the trials. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt strange here. Then the floor beneath him vibrated softly. The platform in the center began to rise, unfolding into a ring of floating crystal structures. Light filled the chamber, bright and sharp. A voice echoed from everywhere at once. "Trial 1 will begin." Elias stood and stepped onto the platform. The air shifted. Suddenly he was no longer in the chamber. He stood on a battlefield. Smoke filled the air. The sky burned red. The ground shook with distant explosions. The smell of fire and metal hit him instantly. Earth. Not just any place. A colony world. He recognized the ruined buildings, the shattered towers. He had been here before. "Not this," he whispered. Screams echoed around him. Civilians ran, panicked. Sirens wailed. Enemy ships roared overhead. He moved without thinking. "Get down," he shouted, grabbing a child and pulling them behind cover. Explosions tore through the street. Heat washed over him. Debris rained down. He knew this memory. This was the day he failed. A blast knocked him to the ground. His ears rang. He pushed himself up, searching. "Where are they?" he muttered. He saw them then, his squad, or what was left of them, bodies. He froze. The trial pressed deeper. Voices filled his head, familiar ones. "You should have been faster. You let us die. You survived, we didn't." Elias clenched his fists. "I know," he said quietly. The pressure increased. The world seemed to close in on him, forcing him to relive every moment, every choice, every mistake. His legs shook. This was not about pain. It was about guilt. Alien observers watched from beyond, their sensors recording his vital signs. Many expected him to collapse quickly. Most species could not endure long exposure to memory trials. Their minds broke under the weight. Elias dropped to one knee. Tears ran down his face, though he did not wipe them away. "I remember," he said. "Every day." The voices grew louder. "Why do you keep going?" He lifted his head. "Because someone has to." The pressure eased slightly, as if surprised. The battlefield faded. He was back on the platform, gasping for breath, sweat soaking his uniform. His heart pounded painfully. The voice returned. "Trial 1 complete." He barely had time to steady himself before the air shifted again. Trial 2 began without warning. This time there was no battlefield, there was silence. He stood in a void, endless and dark, no ground, no sky. Then a figure appeared, Princess Valera. She stood across from him, her expression unreadable. "This is not real," Elias said. "No," the voice of the trial replied through her, "but the choice is." She approached him slowly. "If you accept the bond," she said, "you will never belong only to your kind again." The void shifted. Images formed around them, Earth from orbit, human cities, his home. Then they faded, replaced by alien worlds, unfamiliar skies, strange stars. "You will be judged," she continued. "Hated, feared." Images changed again. Humans shouting in anger, accusing him of betrayal, of abandoning his species. Elias felt his chest tighten. "You will be alone between worlds." The pressure returned, heavier this time. It pushed against his thoughts, his identity. "What are you?" the voice asked. "Human or something else?" Elias struggled to breathe. He thought of the people he had protected, human and alien alike. He thought of the child he had pulled from fire, the civilians on the transport convoy. "I'm a soldier," he said. The image of Valera tilted her head. "That is not an answer." He shook his head slowly. "I'm someone who stands in front," he said, "when others can't." The pressure wavered. "If the galaxy turns on you," the voice asked, "will you still stand?" Elias closed his eyes. "Yes." The void shattered like glass. He collapsed onto the platform again, his strength nearly gone. Alien observers murmured in disbelief. He was still conscious. Trial 3 did not wait. This one was different. No memories, no visions, pain. Pure, controlled pain flooded his nervous system. Not injury, but the sensation of it. Every nerve screamed at once. Elias cried out and fell, his body convulsing. This trial was meant to force surrender. Alien champions often begged within seconds. The pain intensified. "Submit," the voice said. "Yield and it will end." Elias bit down hard, drawing blood. He thought of training drills, of freezing nights, of marches that never seemed to end. He focused on breathing. In, out, the pain became everything. And yet he did not scream again. He did not beg. Minutes passed, then more. The sensors spiked wildly. Alien healers prepared to intervene. The alien king himself leaned forward on his throne, eyes fixed. Finally, the pain ceased. Elias lay still, chest rising and falling slowly. The platform lowered. The voice spoke one last time. "Trials complete." Medical teams rushed in. They lifted Elias gently, placing him on a hovering stretcher. Princess Valera stood nearby, watching. Her expression had changed. There was no doubt now, only respect. As Elias drifted in and out of consciousness, he felt warmth near him, a presence. "You endured," she said softly, though he was not sure if he heard her or imagined it. His eyes fluttered open briefly. "I'm still here," he murmured. "Yes," she replied. "You are." The galaxy had tested him, and the human had not broken. Elias woke to silence. Not the sharp silence of danger, but the soft kind that came after it. His body felt heavy, as if gravity had increased while he slept. Every muscle ached, but the pain was distant, controlled. He opened his eyes slowly. The ceiling above him was smooth and pale, glowing faintly. The light did not hurt his eyes. He turned his head slightly and realized he was lying on a raised platform, surrounded by thin beams of light that moved gently across his body. A medical chamber. He tried to sit up. "Do not," a calm voice said. Elias froze, then relaxed slightly as Princess Valera stepped into view. She stood beside the platform, her posture composed, her hands folded calmly in front of her. "You survived," she said. He let out a weak breath. "I noticed." That earned him something close to a smile. It was brief but real. "The trials are complete," she continued. "You endured all of them. No human has ever done so. No member of my species has endured them in that way either." Elias stared at the ceiling again. "So, what happens now?" "The council argues," she replied honestly. He closed his eyes. "Figures." She tilted her head slightly. "You expected otherwise." "I've met councils," he said. "They argue even when the sky is falling." That made her release a soft sound that might have been a laugh. Outside the chamber, the Empire was far from calm. News of the trials spread quickly through the palace, then beyond it. Nobles whispered. Warriors argued. Scholars debated the meaning of what they had witnessed. A human had faced the sacred trials and lived. Some claimed the trials had been weakened. Others accused the princess of manipulation. A few, quieter voices asked a more dangerous question. What if humans were stronger than they looked? In the Grand Council Hall, tensions rose. "This is madness," one warlord growled. "The bond cannot stand. The human is still an outsider." "He endured the trials," another replied. "Tradition is clear. Tradition was never meant for soft-blooded creatures." The alien king listened, unmoving. His daughter stood beside him, calm as stone. "The trials do not test bodies alone," she said. "They test will, resolve, endurance." "A human trait," someone snapped. She turned her gaze toward them. "Is it?" The argument was interrupted by alarms. Not palace alarms, fleet alarms. A voice echoed through the chamber. Unidentified vessels entering Imperial space. Multiple signatures, weapons hot. The hall erupted. Enemy fleets had been watching, waiting. The moment the bond weakened unity, they struck. In the medical chamber, Elias felt the vibration through the floor. "That doesn't sound like arguing," he muttered. Valera's eyes narrowed. "No, it does not." She turned and spoke quickly to a nearby attendant, issuing commands. Then she looked back at Elias. "You are not fully healed," she said. He swung his legs off the platform anyway, standing unsteadily. "Then they should have waited." She studied him for a moment, then nodded once. "Come," she said. They moved through corridors now filled with urgency. Guards ran past them. Officers barked orders. Holographic displays flickered with tactical data. The enemy fleet was large, too large to be coincidence. "They think this is our weakness," Valera said. "Division." Elias watched the displays. "They're wrong." She looked at him sharply. "Because you endured the trials?" she asked. "No," he said, "because you didn't hide." She considered that. In the command chamber, chaos ruled. Multiple species argued at once. Generals demanded control. Fleets scrambled. Elias stepped forward without thinking. "Your Majesty," he said loudly. The alien king's eyes shifted to him. The room quieted slightly. "They're testing you," Elias continued. "Not just militarily, they want to see if you hesitate." "And you advise what?" the king asked. "Unity," Elias said simply. "Fast, loud." Together, a murmur passed through the room. "A human gives us battle advice now," someone scoffed. Elias didn't look at them. He looked at the tactical map. "They're forming a wide arc," he said. "They expect your fleets to respond in formation." "That is standard doctrine," a general said. "Then don't," Elias replied. The room stilled. "Split your response," he continued. "Small, aggressive units, hit supply ships, confuse their sensors. Humans fight like this when we're outmatched." "You would have us abandon tradition," a noble snapped. Elias finally turned to face them. "Tradition won't stop those ships," he said. "Action will." The alien king studied him. "Let him speak," the king said. Elias explained quickly. Ambush tactics, disruption. Using smaller vessels to create chaos while heavier ships moved unseen. It was not elegant. It was effective. The first clash was violent and brief. Enemy supply ships were hit first, caught off guard by fast-moving strike groups. Communications jammed. Confusion spread through their ranks. The Karzun fleet adapted, moving with a flexibility rarely seen. Elias watched the battle unfold, heart pounding. Princess Valera stood beside him. "You think differently," she said. "We have to," he replied. "We usually don't get a second chance." The enemy fleet began to falter. Then came the ambush. Hidden vessels emerged from hyperspace near the command center, a direct strike, a decapitation attempt. "Shields," someone shouted, too late. A blast rocked the palace. Elias reacted instantly. He pushed Valera down behind a console as debris fell. The room filled with smoke. Security teams rushed in, weapons raised. Enemy boarding units breached the outer levels. Close combat. The kind humans knew too well. Elias grabbed a fallen weapon, moving forward without waiting for orders. "Stay with the guards," he told Valera. "I do not retreat," she said. He met her eyes. "Then stay alive." They fought through the corridors together. Guards fell. Enemies advanced. Elias moved like he always had. Fast, direct, protecting those behind him. An enemy soldier charged. Elias dodged, struck, and kept moving. Princess Valera watched closely. This was not rage. This was purpose. When reinforcements arrived, the boarding force was already breaking. The enemy fleet, leaderless and disorganized, began to withdraw. Victory was swift after that. In the aftermath, the palace stood damaged but intact. So did the bond. The alien king addressed the council once more. "The human stood," he said. "When we were struck," he advised. He defended, he endured. He turned to Elias. "You did not claim power," the king said. "You took responsibility." The hall was silent. "The bond stands," the king declared. Princess Valera stepped forward. Elias felt the weight of the moment settle over him. The galaxy had tested them both, and humanity had not disappointed. The victory did not bring peace. That became clear within hours. Elias stood on a high balcony overlooking the capital city of the Karzun Empire. Smoke still rose in thin lines from damaged structures. Emergency craft moved through the air like glowing insects, carrying wounded and supplies. The battle had been won, but its shadow remained. Behind him, voices echoed from within the palace. Arguments, demands, fear disguised as anger. Princess Valera joined him quietly. "You hear them," she said. He nodded. "Yeah. They fear change," she continued, "more than enemies." "That's normal," Elias replied. "Back home, we do too." She studied him for a moment. "And yet your kind changes quickly." "Because we don't survive otherwise," he said. Inside the council chambers, the mood was sharp and divided. Some nobles praised the humans' actions openly. Others called the victory luck. A dangerous few claimed the attack itself had been invited by allowing a human into sacred tradition. Whispers of conspiracy spread. The loudest voices did not speak of Elias directly. They spoke of humanity. They adapt too fast. They fight without honor. They endure things that should break them. Those were not compliments. The alien king sat in silence, listening. The Empire's enemies were listening too. Across the stars, rival powers analyzed recordings of the battle. They slowed them, studied them, replayed moments where human-led tactics disrupted centuries-old doctrine, and they reached the same conclusion. Humans were unpredictable. That made them dangerous. On Earth, the news arrived hours later. Human command centers filled with tension as reports streamed in. A human soldier had survived alien royal trials, had advised an empire in battle, had fought beside an alien princess. Some celebrated. Others panicked. Political leaders demanded explanations. Military commanders demanded access. Media networks argued over what it meant. Humanity had not planned to stand this tall so soon. Elias did not know any of this yet. He was summoned to the inner council chamber at dawn. This room was smaller than the grand hall, but far heavier. Every being inside carried real power. The alien king stood as Elias entered. "Human," the king said, "you now stand at the center of a storm." Elias inclined his head. "I've been in storms before, Your Majesty." "This one does not end with gunfire alone," the king replied. Valera stood beside her father. Her expression was controlled, but Elias could sense tension beneath it. "The council is divided," the king continued. "Some demand your removal, others demand your elevation." "That sounds familiar," Elias said quietly. A ripple of confusion passed through the room. "Explain," one elder demanded. "In my experience," Elias said, "when people argue like that, it means the old rules aren't working anymore." Silence followed. The king studied him carefully. "You speak as though you understand power," the king said. "I understand responsibility," Elias answered. "Power usually follows." That answer did not please everyone. It impressed the king. "There are those beyond this empire," the king said, "who now see you as a symbol. Some will try to kill you. Others will try to use you." "Let them try," Elias said. "I'm used to being underestimated." Valera's eyes flickered with something like pride. The council's debate ended without full agreement. The bond was not broken, but neither was it fully accepted. A fragile balance. Too fragile. The next test came sooner than expected. A neutral trade world, long protected by Karzun fleets, declared withdrawal from imperial agreements. Within hours, 3 other systems followed. Fear spread faster than loyalty. They feared retaliation from rival empires. They feared human influence. They feared being caught between old powers and something new. Elias watched the reports in the command chamber. "They're pulling away," he said. "They believe we are weakened," Valera replied. "They believe you are divided," Elias corrected. She looked at him sharply. "Is there a difference?" "Yes," he said. "One can be fixed. How? She asked. By showing them you still stand together, Elias said, not with words, with action. The alien king listened from his throne. What action would you suggest, human? He asked. Elias pointed to the map. Escort their convoys, protect their borders without demands, without threats. A noble scoffed. We gain nothing from that. You gain trust, Elias said. That's not nothing. The king considered this. Trust is expensive, he said. So is war, Elias replied. Orders were given. Karzun fleets moved not to punish but to protect. Human vessels were included in the escort groups. It was a risk. The message spread quickly. The empire was not collapsing. It was adapting. For some, that was reassuring. For others, it was unforgivable. Assassins struck 2 days later. Not soldiers, not fleets, individuals. They targeted Elias. The first attempt came in a transit corridor. A silent drone armed with a focused energy blade slipped through security fields. Elias noticed it a fraction of a second before it struck. He moved. The blade grazed his shoulder instead of his throat. He slammed the drone into the wall and crushed its core with brute force. Guards arrived seconds later. The second attempt came that night. Poison introduced into the air system of his quarters. Human physiology saved him. The dosage was calculated for alien biology. The third attempt came during a public appearance. A sniper, long range, perfect position. Elias never saw the shooter. Princess Valera did. She moved without hesitation, stepping in front of him as the shot fired. The projectile shattered against her personal shield. The crowd screamed. Security swarmed. Afterward, they stood alone in a secure chamber. You should not have done that, Elias said, his voice tight. You are bound to me, she replied. Your life is not lesser. That doesn't mean I'm worth yours, he said. She met his gaze steadily. To me, it does. The weight of that statement settled between them. Later, the assassin was captured, not from a rival empire, from within the Karzun political sphere. The truth hit hard. The empire was not just being tested from outside. It was being challenged from within. The alien king addressed the people that same cycle. His message was broadcast across the empire and beyond. We stand at the edge of change, he said. Those who fear it may hide. Those who resist it may fight, but we will not retreat. He placed a hand on Valera's shoulder. Nor will we abandon those who stand with us. Then he did something no one expected. He placed his hand on Elias' shoulder as well. The symbol was clear. The backlash was immediate, but so was the response. Human fleets repositioned. Trade resumed. Neutral systems returned under protection. Slowly, cautiously, trust began to rebuild. Elias felt the pressure growing every day. You carry this well, Valera said one evening as they stood watching the city lights. I don't carry it alone, he replied. She looked at him. That is why I chose you. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he watched the city. The empire was changing. So was humanity's place in the galaxy, and neither side would ever be able to go back. The galaxy did not wait long to answer change. It never did. The first signs came quietly. Trade routes shifted. Diplomatic messages grew careful, then cold. Fleets that once kept their distance began moving closer to Karzun borders, testing reaction times, probing defenses. Elias watched it all from the command chamber, hands resting on the edge of the table, eyes fixed on the moving stars. They're circling, he said. Yes, Princess Valera replied, like predators deciding if the risk is worth the reward. Or like governments deciding who to blame, Elias said. She glanced at him. Humans blame quickly. We're experts, he answered. The alien king stood behind them, silent. Age and power sat heavy on his frame, but his eyes were sharp. They will come, the king said at last. Not to talk, not yet. And when they do, a general asked. Elias spoke before the king could answer. They won't come together, he said. They never do. Several eyes turned toward him. They'll form a coalition, Elias continued, but they won't trust each other. Too many old grudges, too many secrets. And you know this how? A noble demanded. Elias shrugged slightly. Because that's how we do it too. The room fell quiet. The warning came 3 days later. A coalition fleet entered contested space under the excuse of a joint security exercise. Too large, too well armed, too close. The message was clear: stand down or be surrounded. Panic rippled through allied systems. Some worlds immediately closed their gates. Others begged for protection. A few sent messages to the coalition, offering cooperation in exchange for safety. Fear spread faster than loyalty ever could. Elias felt the weight of it pressing in on him. "They're trying to isolate you," he said to Valera, "make you look like the problem." "And you?" she asked. "They're watching me," he replied, "to see if I break." The alien king called for a full broadcast, not just to his empire but to every system listening. Elias was not told what the king would say. He stood beside Valera as the cameras activated, millions of eyes across the stars turning toward the throne. The king spoke slowly. "For generations, we ruled through strength and tradition," he said. "Those things built our empire. But they also bound it." He paused. "Today, others fear us not because we are weak, but because we have chosen to change." The coalition commanders watched closely. "So let me be clear," the king continued. "We do not seek domination, we do not seek war. But we will not abandon our allies, and we will not surrender our future." He turned his head slightly, looking at Elias. "We have learned something from humanity." The murmurs across the galaxy grew louder. "They are small," the king said. "They are fragile. And yet they endure." Elias felt every eye on him. "They stand when logic says retreat," the king said. "They adapt when tradition fails, and they protect not because they must, but because they choose to." The broadcast ended. The coalition responded within the hour. They advanced. The first battle was chaos. Coalition ships poured into contested space, overwhelming outer defenses through sheer numbers. Karzun fleets held formation, fighting with discipline and power, but pressure mounted quickly. Human ships moved differently. They did not hold lines. They slipped through gaps, hit and faded, drew enemy ships out of formation and isolated them. Elias stood in the tactical command, directing movements alongside Karzun officers. "Don't chase," he said. "They want you angry." A Karzun commander hesitated, then followed the order. The trap failed. Coalition losses began to climb. Frustration replaced confidence. Then came the second strike. A coalition task force broke away, heading straight for the capital system. Decapitation. End the symbol and the alliance would fall apart. "They're coming for you," Valera said quietly. Elias nodded. "I know." The alien king turned to him. "You should evacuate," the king said. "This is no longer about tradition." Elias shook his head. "If I leave," he said, "they win without firing another shot." Valera stepped forward. "He stays." The king looked at his daughter, then at Elias. "Then we stand together," the king said. The defense of the capital was brutal. Coalition ships broke through the outer perimeter. Explosions lit the void. Debris scattered like burning rain. Inside the palace, alarms screamed. Elias moved through corridors filled with smoke and injured guards, coordinating defenses as he went. "They're breaching Dock 7, someone shouted. "Seal it," Elias replied. "Fall back to secondary positions." Enemy boarding units poured in. This time they were ready for him. They had studied him, his movements, his habits. They surrounded him in a wide chamber, weapons raised. "You are the human," their leader said. "The symbol." Elias took a slow breath. "If you say so," he replied. They attacked together. Elias moved fast, not with rage but precision. He used the environment, redirected strikes, bought time. He was hit, stumbled, got back up. Guards arrived, then more enemies. The fight blurred into noise and motion. Above it all, Princess Valera fought beside him, calm and deadly, her presence steady. When reinforcements finally pushed the enemy back, Elias leaned against a wall, breathing hard. Blood ran from a cut above his eye. "You are injured," Valera said. "I've had worse," he answered. Outside, the battle reached its breaking point. Human strike groups executed one final maneuver, a risky one. They jumped directly into the heart of the coalition formation, releasing sensor-disrupting charges before scattering. For a moment, everything went dark. Coalition ships lost coordination. Karzun heavy vessels struck. Hard. The coalition broke. Retreat orders echoed across space. The galaxy watched as the impossible happened. The coalition fled. Silence followed. Days later, the diplomatic messages returned. Different now. Careful, respectful, some apologized, others asked for talks. The Empire stood. Humanity stood with it. In the great hall where it had all begun, the alien king addressed the council one final time. "The trials are complete," he said, "not just for the human, for us all." He turned to Elias. "You were chosen," the king said, "and you proved worthy not by strength alone, but by endurance." The king lowered his head slightly, a gesture of respect. The hall followed. Princess Valera stepped beside Elias. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. He looked around the hall. At aliens who once dismissed him, at allies who now stood taller. "No," he said, "I think this is just the beginning." Across the galaxy, a new understanding took root. Humans were not conquerors. They were not saviors. They were something far more unsettling. A species that would stand beside you in the fire and never step away.